Okay, so welcome to part 2 of the Q&A. Again, I'm very sorry about having to do this again. I'm very sorry for the wait and the fact that I had to split this Q&A into 2 different things. But now I am ready. So the first question I am going to answer in this part is, they ask me, why do queer people talk the way they do? The stereotypical gay way / just gay slang in general, why is that, a thing that exists? So this is actually a really interesting topic that I was able to dive into. And so basically what I found was, queer speech was first developed because queer people had to hide in plain sight, so they need to communicate to each other without getting attention from the wrong people. So they used words that already existed and kind of made their own meaning, so again, it would notify queer people but not straight people. Also, being queer was considered a medical condition that needed to be fixed, so most of the terms used for queer people were derogatory, and this is specifically talking about, I for sure know that this was definitely a trend that happened between the 1800s and the 1900s. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a thing earlier on in this, but so most words were either derogatory in a slur / offensive way, or just it was basically a disease or medical condition sort of way. So what queer people did was they reclaimed these words and used them as an identity rather than an insult, and this can be shown with terms used even today, like queer, used in the wrong context to this day could be considered a slur. And we as a community reclaimed it to be a more general way of describing our experiences. So linguists also believe queer language was developed to create solidarity in a heavily discriminated environment. There were also studies made to see the difference between queer speakers and heterosexual ones, but there was no conclusive evidence, which implied the stereotyped gay talk is a social / ideological construct rather than something that can be empirically proven or is part of the kind of biological makeup of being gay. Queer people also use queer talk to socially perform being queer. So Judith Butler in 1990 wrote an essay called Gender Trouble. And this essay talks about how gender is not a biological thing, it is a social construct, in the sense that we perform gender, specifically the stereotypical male-female, we perform gender so that we can't get basically brownie points in society. We don't get ostracized, we don't get discriminated against. That is why we perform gender. And the way people act to what gender they're assigned to at birth is not natural. They were taught and conditioned that way, and they saw that when they acted this way, good things would happen. They wouldn't get punished. People would not be rude to them. And this can also reflect why some queer people talk in a more stereotypical gay talk way. that you see on television, because they feel that if they socially perform what people or what society perceives as how gay people talk, specifically the gay talk is mostly associated with queer men or gay men, they will talk this way so that they feel like they're more accepted as a queer person, / it helps them feel more secure with their identity as well. So these are all different ways that queer slang was developed and why it was. And again, I thought this was really interesting. So yeah. So now I am going to answer the question of how do you deal with transphobic parents without just kind of letting go what they're saying or ignoring it or dealing with it. My first word of advice is you should assess your safety. If you think mentioning your gender identity to your parents would cause them to kick you out, hurt you in any way, try to take you to some sort of conversion camp or take you to some sort of church to pray, etc., the best way is to just wait. Wait until you have more of a secure income, a place that you can live on your own. Wait till you can support yourself before you try to reveal anything to your parents. I know it's hard to do that. Trust me, it's what I had to do. But we do live in a world where it's very possible for people like us to get murdered for being ourselves. And your safety is number one priority, and sometimes we have to accept the world we live in. And it's better to hide than to be dead. So, if you feel like that you don't have to worry about your safety from doing this, here is some advice. So first, try to talk to your parents, and not in an emotional way or arguing. I know that's something me and my family sometimes have an issue with. We argue rather than really having a good discussion about something. And when I say talk, I mean you and your parents or your caregivers have equal ground or on equal footing when you're discussing. And just try to really talk about how you feel, your transness. And to add on to this, educate them about your experiences and what it means to be trans. Because people fear what they don't understand. So explaining this will make them understand, will make them see it in a different light than what they have. Then another thing you can do is explain how you're feeling. A lot of parents do care about their kids' well-being and how they feel. So describing the way it makes you feel sometimes can influence their prejudices as well. Over the years, I've heard common arguments about genderqueer / being trans. Here are kind of some rebuttals to help if your family or caregivers kind of bring these up. So the first one is, there wasn't any of this back in the day. So my response to this is, it was there. It was just that the people who tried to speak up about it were either killed, hurt, or institutionalized in some way. There are many ancient civilizations that had more than male and female genders. There is record in colonial America of a non-binary person named Universal Public Friend who just lived with using they them pronouns. And there were people like Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera who were trans women who fought for trans rights during the civil rights era in America. So this isn't a fad. Being genderqueer or trans is not a fad. And we've been here for as long as humanity has been around.
Not a sale.
My next argument that I hear people often say is, "You're too young to know."
Where my hug at?
And my response is, yes, people change. And someone may change their mind about things as time goes on. But this is how you feel now. And that should be respected. Next one. There are only two genders. And my rebuttal is, biological sex doesn't equal gender. We use those two interchangeably, sex and gender, but they aren't the same. Gender is how you perceive yourself and how society affects the way you perceive yourself. Biological sex is the sex organs in you that influence the hormones inside of you, but they are two different things. Also, if it is natural for people to only be male or female, then being genderqueer / trans wouldn't exist. If it was the way things should be, this wouldn't be an issue. This wouldn't be something people would experience. And also people such as intersex people, which are people whose has both male and female sex organs, and it's different for each person, they wouldn't exist. Intersex people wouldn't exist. And no matter what your sex is, you have hormones like testosterone and estrogen. There's a idea that only females have estrogen.
Women.
Only males have testosterone, but that is not true. These hormones don't just affect sex organs, they affect other part of the body. So that's my statement for that. And then the last one is, you're so attractive as a blank.
Is that guy okay?
So, as a girl, as a boy, whatever your assigned gender at birth was, this is about you. This isn't about the person who is saying this. If you are sexy as one gender, then you're going to be sexy as another. And attractiveness should not stop you from being who you want to be. Who cares what you look like as long as you are happy? So that is kind of my take on how to deal with transphobic parents. Alright, so this next question is, how does a crush feel? And as I've mentioned before, I am aro ace, so I've never really felt a crush. I've felt things that I thought were crushes, but I was actually wrong. Okay. So, I had to ask friends. And yes, I actually have friends. Lol.
You are so funny.
I know, it's like I don't even try.
So, this is what my friends who actually feel crushes feel, and what they told me. So, my one friend really put their whole bussy into this explanation. I thought it was really amazing. And I don't have it verbatim, sadly. I really wish I did put it down. But this is generally what they said. it feels like you're floating because there's this person that means a lot to you and you want to further your relationship. But there's also this dread that they don't want you or they will react badly when you confess your feelings to them. My other friend said that it's just bonkers. And you will do things you never expected to do because you care about this person or you want to impress them, or a little bit of both. And the one thing that they both said is you can't help but constantly think about this person. Things that you will never expect to remind you of them. It can be very mundane things. That's where a lot of the romantic songs come into as well. So, yeah, that is apparently how a crush feels.
FNAF at Freddy's. That's where I wanna go. FNAF at Freddy's. Underneath the mistletoe. Yeah.
So that is it for this video. If you haven't seen the first one, I recommend seeing it, checking it out, and checking out all my other videos. So that is it, as I said. If you like what you're seeing here, you can check out my Instagram, my Goodreads, and my Patreon, and they are all on my bio, so see you around, hopefully.
This piano plays me.